Welcome to Built from Scratch. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs under 30 to hear about the stories of their initial success. My goal is to encourage the next generation of leaders to take action and make a difference. I'm Eric Libby. In today's episode, we have entrepreneur Charles Wissa with Asic Jungle. Originally from Montreal, Canada, Charles began his entrepreneurial journey in 2020 when he founded a platform for buying and selling crypto mining hardware, just 2 weeks before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. His interest in crypto mining started in 2016 when a friend introduced him to the Ethereum and Bitcoin. Now, 4 years later, Charles turned that curiosity into Asic Jungle that has since grossed over 8 figures in revenue, grown to a team of 7, and has served Fortune 500 companies. Recognized for his expertise, Charles was even featured in Forbes in 2022 and continues to be a trusted name in the crypto mining space. Charles is just 29 years old. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Right on, man. So every show we start back at the beginning, back at square one. And you gave me a little before our episode started here, Charles, a little background on your parents being Egyptian and came to Canada. But I'd love to know, like, what do you kind of remember from early childhood growing up in Montreal?
It was nice, honestly. We lived in townhouses, and there was a bunch of kids my age. So even till today, one of them is still my best friend, Julian. It was really nice. Montreal was a nice place to grow up. Still is, but it's not what it used to be. I'll tell you that much.
Beautiful. And kind of growing up, and your parents, I'm assuming their parents were immigrants, so they came here.
Yes.
It's interesting because there's a couple of founders that I've talked to that have had that similar story. What did your childhood with immigrant parents look like, maybe compared to some of your friends that were native to Montreal? Like, is there any noticeable differences that you had versus maybe friends growing up?
Yes, there was, but at the time when I was a kid, I was very oblivious to these things. Generally speaking, back then, people were just very welcoming. So it wasn't too bad, but they were actually quite curious about other cultures. But the approach my parents had was much more about integration. So they did a lot of effort in telling me, like, you're Canadian, you're Quebecer, like, you're born and raised here. So the upbringing was pretty much the same as my peers. I never noticed a difference. Probably there was, but I was always oblivious.
But it was okay. Yeah, no, that's interesting. There was our last episode that we had, we interviewed somebody named Sharuka, and her parents were from Sri Lanka. And she said literally everywhere they went, like, it was very apparent where her parents grew up, and totally different mindset. And so that was just kind of like passed from their parents down to her, which is kind of an interesting story. So it's cool to see the differences. And now, Charles, if you look back again at this time period, obviously the show is about entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. Was there parts of your early story that you can remember, like maybe little activities you were doing that showed, like, now hindsight, you look back, like, that was probably the initial ideas of me being an entrepreneur?
Definitely. I mean, I was incredibly lucky to know what I wanted to do with my life at a very, very young age. So it came as no surprise to my parents or to most people around me, the choices that I've made. By the time I was 12 or 13, I had already read all the classics, Think and Grow Rich, Richest Man in Babylon, The Wealthy Barber, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'd already covered those fundamental classics, which had already shaped my mind from a young age to kind of understand certain aspects of money. So it came as no surprise. It was planned all along.
Why? So you're 12 years old, and I'm just curious. Yeah. Like, you kind of silver plattered me there for a second. Like, why were you doing that as a 12-year-old? Like, your parents, are they teaching you? Are they pushing you to do this? Is it just like light bulb goes off? I'm going to read Think and Grow Rich today. For
sure, my father played a big impact on that. He was an entrepreneur. When it was days off of school, he would take me to his office. It was a little office that he would go to, and he'd be alone in the office. So I would sit down and I'd see his colleagues that were sharing the building. So that definitely put the groundworks.
So he was working, and then you brought your book, and you just kind of got to see that while you were there.
In a sense. And it definitely, I mean, my father's an engineer by trade, and he kind of raised us to have the mind of an engineer. So we were always tackling different problems, and he was always like pushing me to try to find solutions. And he was always talking to me about what he's doing. So for sure.
So when you were younger, he was like, Charles, you got to, like, start thinking about this now. Like, start, like, look at this. Look at this. Start thinking about this. You're going to be an entrepreneur one day. Is it like those kind of seeds were just planted?
No, not that blatant.
Okay.
But more so, like, if I was, as a child is curious, he would kind of try to push me to come to my own conclusions and as to what it is. And just seeing him being an entrepreneur, I think is what
started
kind of
the spark.
Put the two together.
Beautiful. So you progress down. You're seeing your dad as in kind of your early age, seeing him as an entrepreneur and have a good influence from what it sounds like from your parents and growing up in a good Montreal community at the time. And now maybe we progress towards maybe those high school years. Was there any other entrepreneurial endeavors that you remember from like the initial, like when you were in that high school time period?
Yeah. I was always trying to like sell little trinkets and
that's so interesting. Every entrepreneurial story. What did you do? What kind of trinkets, if you can remember?
Oh man, I remember this one. This one must have been mid high school. I would say there was these like silicone bracelets.
Were they called silly bands?
And they were not the silly band. I think the silly bands were like thin. These were like. I think it was like it was a campaign for breast cancer.
Okay.
And they had made these like silicone, and they were very popular. They were selling for $5 each. And I saw on some Chinese website that they were selling "I love haters," which was a kind of in line with the same thing with the same kind of quality. But I took a loan from my father that I don't think I ever repaid, to be honest with you. I think it was like $70 or something. Bought a bunch of them and kind of like spread them to my friends from different schools. Told them like, listen, you guys keep 5, sell the rest, bring the money Friday when we meet up. So I was always like trying to do different things like that.
Incredible. Yeah. So like you scheming like business, like here's the business model, we're giving away 5 and then you get to keep some. So there's like a little affiliate there, right? So they make the sale, they're like keeping like, it's beautiful. It starts so small. So exactly. You progress and you go through high school and you end up landing at Concordia. And I'm curious, at this point in your life, why did you think that school was the right option for you? And maybe why that school? Yeah.
So John Molson School of Business, which is Concordia, it still is kind of like an up and coming business school. It has good programs. So chose to go there, much to my mother's dismay. She wanted me to go into doctor, engineering, or the classic lineup. But I did think it was important to go to school. I still value a lot of what school kind of teaches us, and like just having that paper. I know it's not quite as fashionable these days, but bear in mind, I'm in Quebec. In Quebec, or schooling is pennies compared to the US. In a sense, free education, you take advantage of that. So you play the cards that you're dealt, and that was a very pro for me. So I went along that route, and I made sure to finish it. It was a great effort to finish it because there was other opportunities at the time as well. But I'm happy I did.
You got it done. I definitely
don't regret that. Yeah.
What do you think like during that time? And I asked this question too, because I think there's that student that's like 18 and they're like, like, what do I want to do? Like, can I start my own business, or should I go to school? Or like, what would I even learn at school? I'm not really sure what I want to do with my career. We've had some founders answer really interestingly to this question, but what do you feel like the biggest, like you're obviously happy. You said I would like, in a sense, you wouldn't have done it differently. Like you would have still gone there and finished. What did you really take away? Like what was maybe not even tangible, but what skill set or what lessons was like the most important that you got from college?
That's a good question. I do want to preface the fact that I'm not sure if I would have done it differently if it had a big price tag as what you would expect in the US, just given my background and my family's background. What I learned, the thing is that with school, I also did internships. I was in a co-op program, and I learned a lot from those internships in terms of the corporate structure that I applied to business. And then the school curriculum, I think there is still value in having the paper itself to some degree in conversations, having that in weight,
like credibility.
Not much. Yeah, but it doesn't bring that much, to be very honest. But also kind of, it does teach you a certain framework to look at certain opportunities. Some of them are wrong, some of them are right, but having that ability and that exposure to kind of determine it yourself and having that exercise of critical thinking is where I think there's a value. Because some of it you'll use it in life, and some of them you'll know to avoid it.
Yeah, that's what I felt. There was classes that I had that I'm like, I will never, like, this will never be relevant. I just won't ever use it. But then there was a couple that were impactful. I remember some of the finance stuff where I was just like, okay, I have no idea what they're talking about, but I know it's gonna be relevant like 2-3 years. So I should probably do my best to figure it out. Yeah. And
also I will say, my business partner, Artem, which is what, like that relationship is what started everything. I met him in university.
Right on. Perfect segue. So my next question, 2016, is when Artem starts planting some of those initial seeds of like, here is Ethereum, here is Bitcoin, and you're kind of figuring this stuff out, your interest is peaked. And I'd love to know, like, be a fly on the wall, like what was those initial conversations? Because it sounded like even before you had an interest in technology, but you found this and it like connected the dots. You're like, whoa.
So to preface that first meeting, I had, like that first introduction to Artem that I had, even when I was a kid, the 2008 crisis happened. It impacted most family, it impacted my family. And a couple of years after, when the information was coming out, well, what happened? Like, what are these banks and what the hell did they do? And I kind of consumed, and I started understanding, or I was still young, consumed kind of what it is, or what is it that our financial system is built upon. And it just made very little sense to me. And you kind of quickly gathered that it makes very little sense to many people, at least kind of the vulnerabilities of it and how the hell we got here and everything. And I lived my youth in my head. Big thinker, overthinker, perhaps. I always tried to play around with like different systems that could potentially work in a fictional world in my head. So when I met Artem eventually in university, and he introduced me to this concept called Ethereum and Bitcoin. This is exactly what I was looking for. This was the system that I was looking that would kind of fill the gaps of and the vulnerabilities of our financial system. So the introduction was kind of more of a connecting the dots of like, this is what I've been waiting for. But that came through meeting Artem. And also he was just a great guy, so we got along very well, very quickly.
Very cool. And so like before then, you're like, what about specifically, because crypto is still something become much more relevant in the past couple of years, but it's been still this kind of out there like, oh, are you in crypto? This tag or this label, it's like not a stock, right? How did you know that was the thing? Like what about it specifically? You've been searching for years.
Yeah, it was the thing in its entirety, at least Bitcoin. The genius behind the actual system itself of creating both an incentive and a decentralized system that is uncorruptible in a sense, right? Because the biggest issue with our system and our banking system, that it was corruptible and vulnerable to corruption, and that the incentives were so shrouded in a makeshift language of finance that most people could not understand, not because they're dumb, but just because it was made in a way that not to be understood by the masses in a sense. And this was just all wide in the open. The lay of the game is very clear. The incentives are clear and not to the detriment of the actual users, which is a big one. So it was taking all of it together. And the philosophy of it itself, we look at different systems today and how we're trying to kind of globalize the world, but how do we actually go about it? This way is what makes the most sense, because we don't have interest that converges and clashes with each other.
Right on. That's crazy. And I love the text. You mentioned Artem as like one of your buddies early on. You become business partners later with Asic, but I think in the middle there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was you quoted a lifestyle brand that you guys created in the interim.
So it wasn't a lifestyle brand, but we had a news website. So this was maybe a month after we had met. He started talking to me about this news website that they made for him and Dragomir, or other business partner, had started developing. And he's like, do you want to be a part of it? Do you want to take a look at it and see? And yeah, so we had this like little website that we were running called, I don't remember what it was called, but we were running it. In the first month, we had 100 page views. We were super excited about it. But Artem and I, whenever we had an exam, like the exam period comes up, we would kind of focus on exams, the traffic would crash, and then we try to pick it back up, and then exam period starts. So then eventually that's when I was like, you guys keep kind of going with, starting businesses and everything. I'm just going to focus on school for the next couple of years, finish it, and then tackle and start another company
later on.
And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. So, the timing fit just perfectly.
What were you guys selling? Because you're getting page views, but what was at the end of that?
So we didn't get to a point where we were trying to sell anything. We were just trying to
gain traction, awareness, and okay, interesting.
Yeah. Well, so the big thing that we gained was just kind of more knowledge about how things work.
The main takeaway is like maybe from that experience was, how do you actually get traction on something? Like, how do you gain interest from an audience to it's not a product, but said like unit or wherever, like trying to get people. Is that your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway, actually, I would say, was just doing, not overthinking it and doing,
taking action. Yeah. Beautiful.
That's the biggest thing that stopped me for a lot of things. Although I would have my little things here and there, but it was always trying to over-educate myself, trying to before starting and overthinking it, and what if this, what if that, and that kind of just taught me like, go
Just go make it work. And so now you spend time on this. You ended up graduating, and then in 2020, Asic Jungle comes around, and I pulled this off LinkedIn, and then I also combined it with a quote you gave me in our pre-interview. So I'm going to do my best here, but I want you to add on some context. So in your LinkedIn it says, facilitating the acquisition and liquidation of secondhand miners, or in the words that you gave for the lay person who maybe doesn't understand it, you said, think of it like you're in the gold rush and you have some gold miners that need shovels. We are the seller of the shovels.
Yes.
Give me some more context about what Asic Jungle does.
So Asic Jungle, we essentially we're distributors of this hardware. It's a specialized computer called an ASIC. ASIC stands for Application Specific Integrated Circuit. And it's just a weirdly shaped computer that you wouldn't kind of think of. And it has like fans on the sides. And what it does, it does a single calculation, series of calculations rather, which is trying to solve the block. And by solving the block in that mathematical equation of the Bitcoin network, you get Bitcoin. So it's just a computer that you plug in and it starts running. It starts calculating. And it's very loud. It gets very hot. So you kind of have to put it in an environment that is dedicated to kind of host these machines. So we actually sell the machines.
So and you, it's kind of like as a broker, right? So you'll buy it and then you'll sell it to, okay.
Yeah. So we also sell new as well, but generally speaking, like we have clients that need to liquidate their assets. So we have clients that are looking to buy these assets and bridge the gap.
I'm curious, before I go into first steps, because there's a few really good stories that you mentioned. How did you even figure out, how did you figure out like, okay, we need to get these computers and this is going to mine for Bitcoin and then we got to sell? Like what did that look like?
So going back on that story of how I met Artem. So after I finished graduating, I had either a job lined up, but I wanted to kind of start a company. And Artem came to me and he's like, listen, like I've been doing this thing where I'm buying and selling these machines. I want to make a marketplace. I want to bring Drago, the same person we had the website with, and we tackle it all together. At the time, like you look at these transactions, you look at the flow of these transactions, and you're like, a marketplace makes total sense. So that's what we did. We joined up back up. The boys were back, and we started building this marketplace.
I'm going to insert, this is perfect timing. I'm going to insert this quote you gave me in the pre-interview. You said, when we first started, and mind you for the listeners, this is 2020.
Yes.
Let's flash back there for a second. What was going on in 2020?
March 2020.
So 2 weeks into the business, COVID starts, and you said it felt like getting absolutely pummeled by Mike Tyson.
Yeah. For the first year, because we're also developing the product, and we couldn't get in front of the clients in a physical way as well, right? Because the best rapport you can have is by being in front of the clients and talking to them. Yeah, so every day we would just wake up and it was very bleak. And it felt like if I was getting knocked down by Mike Tyson every day, but I would get up and I didn't know why. I wasn't sure anymore, but we kept at it and it worked out.
So the Steve Jobs quote, that's like, you can't see the things occurring like when you're going forward, but you can always connect the dots looking backwards.
Yes.
Why do you like now you've had the time, it's been 5 years since then. What would be your best guess? How did you keep going when you were just getting absolutely pummeled? At
the time, I was a very big pessimist and a bear of the market. I was in finance technically as a background. I always saw it as a thing where it's, here are my options. Either I go in and get a job and then the market goes south, I'm the first one out the door. Or I give this a shot and I keep giving it a shot. Worst case, I'm at the door anyways. So it was, in general, I think there's a lot of denial that comes with it as well. I think you believe in something so much that you refuse to accept
logical truth.
No as an answer. And it really comes down to it. I think as entrepreneurs, we have like that sense of, we have calculated risks, but also that diluted sense of reality a bit.
It's like being naive is almost in a way good sometimes, because if you know all the answers, like if you know most of the answers, or you've been down the road, you've had a little experience, you become almost like hard-headed, like that this is just like change is not as adaptable. And maybe that's a benefit 100%. That we have is like on being under 30 is like we're still like able to like bounce around, like we're able to like change. It's like we've never seen it before, and then somebody that's experienced it 4 times, maybe been knocked down every time, it's like this doesn't work, but that person didn't know the 5th time is when they actually get up and they win the prize and they make the massive company. It's like they've just seen kind of the failure on it. So it's very interesting.
I think that's a bigger fear than the fear of always being down. Is the fear of
you had one more shot.
Exactly.
One more
At
shot.
the next
hit
iteration, that's the one.
You can never know.
And I think that's a bigger fear, if I'm being honest with you. Yeah, that makes sense.
And as the entrepreneur, that's the game we're playing. Like this is an Alex Hormozi. Are you an Alex Hormozi fan, Charles? Have you ever heard of him?
I think I know the name. I'm not sure which. There's a lot of these guys out there. Which one is that?
So Alex Hormozi
is that the one with the no strip?
Yeah, it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes,
he says that everybody wants a guarantee, but they're looking for a guarantee from a world that doesn't give one. And as an entrepreneur, you want to know. You almost like, gosh, I will put in X amount of work if I know I can get Y return. And it's like how great a perfect world is that? But the thing is, we don't get that. And so like you come to these moments where, why are you getting up, Charles? Like, why are you still pushing really hard? Like, doesn't make sense. And it's like there's a sense of like grit and maybe faith in the universe. Like, all right, I'm gonna put in an amount of effort, and like at some point, like I know if I don't stop, I will figure it out. Like you said earlier, I will figure out, I will win because I put enough reps into it. That's crazy.
The way I started seeing it as well is that it's like essentially as entrepreneurs, we're trying to be elite athletes. Like I used to be a speed skater when I was younger, which I think a lot of my discipline comes from that. You got to train. You got to train a lot. You're injured a lot. You feel tired a lot, but when competition day comes up, you're performing and you notice that you're getting better. And I did at a certain point started seeing it as practice, as the number of races I do, the better I'll get.
As you continue to go through this time period, like you're in this locked in mindset of I'm going to keep pushing despite all the fire and storms and being away. Like, how did you break through to get that first customer?
So when things started opening up a little bit, there was a small conference in the Ozarks, and we were like, okay, we got to take this opportunity. We got to give it a shot. And myself and one of my business partners, Nuno, we flew out to the conference, and we got in front of the client.
You knew who you were looking for going into it, where you're like, this is who we need to get in front of.
It was a very niche conference anyways. Mm-hmm. So it was exactly our target market. So it's like one of those, like, it doesn't matter who you talk to because they're all there for the same reasons. And like everybody's a client there. Getting in front of the client, I don't think there's anything that's better than that.
So curious. So if that's customer number one, you go to like a networking event, customer acquisition strategy at scale, has it been primarily like we just need to be in person? Like, so your business deal, and I think I remember that from our pre-interview as well, is you're going to countries all across the world to meet in person. So is that like a good chunk? I would assume it is, but a medium of getting customers. Like I suppose more question wise, how has that changed from attempt number one, getting that first customer, to now where you're at now 5 years later in the business? When
we started building up the name and the brand, things got a lot easier. And my partners were also like a little bit better than I was when it comes to getting traction, not in person, at least at the initial stage. The initial stage, I felt like I needed to be in front of the clients. But after that, like with a reputation, like credibility goes a long way. I have a lot of clients that have never met them till today. And they've spent millions of dollars with us. I remember even in the early days, like 4 years ago, we had a client here. We had closed him. At that point, there was like $2 million worth of deals. And I met him 2 years later. And he very excitedly was showing his partners, this is the first time I see his face. Like we had never even FaceTimed. Mm. But so credibility changes the game. Having a brand like really changed the game.
Interesting. How have you set that up? Like for someone that's thinking about building their brand, like there is a lot of businesses where you have to be the face for them to even trust in that. How have you gotten to that point? Like what are some of those maybe a few actions you can reflect on that people now, Asic Jungle is the front, like that is more valuable than any other face in your company. What have you done to do that?
We started doing things a bit differently. So we were in crypto, but to kind of be clear, we're in Bitcoin, and not only Bitcoin, we're in Bitcoin mining. It's a very niche of a niche industry.
Niche inside of a niche inside of a niche, yeah.
And we're talking about energy and infrastructure more than we're talking about crypto. So the conferences lacked that crypto flair in a sense. So what we did was we started getting Lambos and slapping our, like very typical, slapping our logo on it and parking it in front of the conferences and people loved it. They really engaged well with it. It got people talking. So we did things different, but they were things that worked in other industries, right? Like it's a very classic thing to do. But because it was not being done in our industry, we just adopted it. And it worked. It worked. And for a long time, we were known as the Lambo guys.
The Lambo guys, yeah.
But we've since moved away from it.
Right. So you would go into whatever city and you'd rent a Lambo and then you put a sticker on it. And I'm assuming so say you get a customer from that. It's like customer acquisition cost is literally rent a Lambo, get a sticker, and then pay for us to go out there. And like, if we can get $1 million customer from it, like no brainer.
Yeah. I mean, because we're also in a high ticket item category with volume. So yeah, it's a no brainer.
Yeah. And I love that move too, because it's totally a brand association. So you come in, maybe nobody knows you. You associate with the most prestigious, luxurious item. You put your logo on it. And now when people think Lambo, they think you. You're basically using their name to like get you propelled away for it. But it's like, as a business, it's like, if you want to, you have to give people frames or like connection. Like it's like this, it's not like that. Like you don't put that on a Kia Soul, right? Like a little small car, right? Like you put it on like the prestigious, exactly. Right? Yeah. I like that. I like that move a lot.
Yeah, and we actually did we continued on to that kind of line of thinking, and eventually we actually ended up doing a Rolex giveaway one year.
Did you have like in the centerpiece? Did you have your logo in there or something?
So we didn't have the logo, but we did the palm dial. So I don't know if you know what the palm dial looks like, but it's very Asic Jungle vibes in a sense, because it's like green palms as the face of the watch.
Beautiful.
Oh, we ingrained the Asic Jungle in the back. Actually, an intern of a company that we did not know ended up winning the watch.
A Rolex. Oh my gosh. So he's just starting his career and he just gets like $1,000 watch, thousands and $1,000 watch.
Thousands, yeah. I would say I think almost, yeah.
That's crazy. Another topic I want to go to on the company side is you are the acting CFO of Asic Jungle. And one thing I was curious about before prepping is like how in the crypto industry, like how do you think about managing finances? And because it's so, for a while, it's been so volatile. So like up and down. And if you can give like a high level of like how you think, if it's different, maybe it's not different at all, but if it is different, how do you think about actually managing finances?
So we've kind of grown as business owners in terms of how we manage it. Early on, we were really reinvesting it into different kind of conferences, different marketing strategies to really kind of get the name out there and bring the increase the team, grow the team, grow the visibility, the footprint. And we were kind of assuming that this market is going to keep going up. Not in the literal sense. We had like this understanding that this is crypto. It's very cyclical. We need to be careful. But I think we were a little bit quicker to spend, to reinvest it, but really spend the money. Now we're much more conservative. Like I think now that the name has weight, we're not as quick to want to spend the money in a sense. Like we still do marketing tactics and everything, but it's much more controlled. And I'll tell you this, like we do think about preparing for downturns. It's much more involved in the conversation weekly on how to position to protect the cash flow and to project it
to where you're going.
To where you're going.
In thinking about like the setting up like a pro forma or you're putting a projection together, how accurate can you be with crypto? And you're thinking like, all right, this quarter, this is roughly projections. Like, are these estimates from what you've seen? Is it like it's going to be somewhere between here because it's so, again, volatile? Or is it like you've been able now being in the industry for this long, like, yeah, we're going to be pretty much around here. And this is usually a pretty good guess, pretty good estimate.
Given our position, So given our position in the market at the moment, in terms of like our market share, we could reliably project. But if we're not working, we're not making money. There's no recurring passivity, right? You're constantly scouting and looking for deals, but there's a few variables that you keep in mind. You have like the long-term variable, that near the end of the year, especially December, like that last quarter, like there's a lot of volume going on because companies already know how much they're going to be making. They want to expense a bunch. So you can anticipate quite a large volume, especially at the end of the year. End of quarters are usually good. And you're also always keeping tabs on the market and what's going on, like these tariffs that are kind of happening, and you can have an understanding of what that translates and how that impacts the industry and how to perhaps navigate our budget. So there's the aspect of historicals, and you're keeping track of what's going on in the world. Closely. We're very sensitive to the world.
Yeah. When we think about, because I think this is important as the entrepreneur, especially those that are just getting started, how have you thought about personal finance and budgeting? So like you have the company, obviously at the beginning, you're reinvesting a lot of that back into the company, but kind of that topic of when to take a salary, how much should I be taking, how much should I reinvest back into the company, like quarter to quarter, how are you thinking about that for yourself? And maybe how has it changed, if it has changed?
So early days, we were definitely like compromising our own personal finances, and we just focus on the business. We're putting all of the energy on the business. Us, even in terms of health and finance, like kind of came second. So whatever energy we had, we just put it onto the business. And I think it's probably a product of age. Getting closer to 30, I look at it differently. I think starting at 23, 24, you can handle the sacrifices, but now I look at it a bit differently. I think it's still good to look at it where you want your salary to kind of be just for living expenses, and that your incentive of like is to hit it out of the park with the company itself. Like even regardless, I wouldn't give like I don't think about giving a big salary to myself or anything like that. So you still want to keep it limited, but you do have to live. And I think we at certain points in time compromise that significantly.
One of the questions I asked is one of the harder things that you're going through or you're working through as an entrepreneur right now. And you told me that one of the skills that you're working on is managing and leading people. And I kind of want to go through like a little bit of a framework here. There's 3 questions on this specific topic that I'd love to know you've obviously up to this point, you've built a team, you have 7 people on your team. So you're kind of looking to take that jump into that next step, like really leading bigger teams. But I guess like first, maybe start with how did you build your team up to where they are today? How have you thought about building a solid core of 7 of you that you have?
Lucky for me, we're not just utilizing one brain, but also my business partner's brains. It's based on, I think at some point you kind of notice the work pile up and your time dwindle. So you just naturally go, okay, I think now it's time to start expanding the team. Okay, then you start looking at what it is that is consuming your time, or you might not be the best at, and you know what, let's outsource this and hire somebody for this. But what I'm thinking about is when growing the team, I'm thinking about the culture. We're thinking about the culture. We're thinking about who we need to be to maintain a sustainable growing team, because at the end of the day, you are your weakest link. So it kind of creates this environment of, I need to be showing up every day the best that I can be. Money's a motivator for people, but it's not, from my experience, it's not the thing that motivates them the most. I think they want to feel like they're part of a good, strong team, and that are being led by good, strong individuals as well. It's about kind of figuring out that medium point of what game I have to be bringing every day. What's the flexibility there? Being in a small team, kind of balancing, not only being a small team, but also being young, balancing that kind of power dynamic to not be too imposing and not be too friendly either. So it's a moving balance. Target, yeah, at least for now. Yeah. These are the points that I'm still learning. Right. Actively.
And so that's point number 2 is like, how do you know, because there's a skill, like you mentioned, there's something that you want to work on. There's like a learning that you need to have here. How have you actively figured that out? Is it just you've realized, okay, we're working with older people and it's tough. I can't really like tell them what to do in this specific way because I don't want to come off as like demeaning to them or like I'm insulting their intelligence. Like how have you become aware of that?
How have I become aware of it? They make you aware of it.
So they say, all right, stay in your lane. You're 29 years old. Stay in your lane. Like that's not. I know what I'm doing here.
Not in that sense. Not in that sense. But it's. I guess it's more subtle. It's more subtle in how things are being received or what's actually being done versus what's kind of being determined as a second priority. And you're like, huh? But no, like we need to finish that now. Yeah, it's a little harder to give a concrete answers. But how I try to figure it out is, to be honest, I go back to books, management books, contents online. Honestly, what I've realized is a lot of the information is out there.
It's already there. Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's already there. And if you just remove the stubbornness of being like, well, it can't be that simple. Sometimes it is just that simple. People want to be respected, and when you respect them, they'll respect you. When you remain genuine but still firm, that's well received. Like setting those kind of boundaries, but not like being so forceful on them. Mm-hmm. It's much more of a qualitative thing.
Right.
It's more social, but that things like that. That's where like the books come in.
I'm curious, like when we talk about where you've been in these past few years, Charles, with starting the company 5 years in, you start out like things are just you're getting knocked in the teeth every single day, and you start building up, start getting some clients. And now it's like you get to the point where you don't even have to be there for your clients. Like they trust you enough to do that. You've gone through multiple levels. You defeated multiple bosses, but I'm curious today, what is that thing that keeps you up at night? What is that problem you're trying to solve, that wall that you're trying to get through that you just quite haven't at the point you're at in entrepreneurship right now?
That's an interesting question. So now what I'm doing now, I'm actually putting a lot of my time into my other company called Block Power. And what we're doing is we're starting a fund and raising capital. That's quite different. Closing $1 million order is really, really quick at this point. It's the same kind of chain of conversations. You have a good feel for it. Hence, like the clients trusting me and everything. But raising $1 million is a whole different game. That conversation with investors is very different. That's kind of the mountain I'm looking forward to climbing. Crazy. That's the puzzle I'm looking forward to cracking. Because you go through that, cracking the sales process. It's incredibly rewarding, and it's a skill set that just translates to everything, right? Literally everything. And this is just going to be a new skill to add to the toolbox. And that's the big mountain that I'm looking forward to cracking.
I love that.
I think that's
a tool. It's a tool in a tool belt. It's a tool in a tool belt. So it's like the one little thing. And then again, you crack this one, and then it's like, what's the next mountain you have to climb? You get over that one. It's like, it's not done. It keeps going.
Yeah. That's how it compounds. I mean, it's in a sense, it's almost like an innovation within yourself, right? Like even as humans, we have these moments of like hyper innovations that just takes us to the next level, and that just really carries us forward into this parabolic state, or exponential state. So yeah, I think that's like the next one for me.
You told me before we spoke that when asking, what's your greatest accomplishment ever? Perfect segue into what you just mentioned. And I was almost looking for that. I was at least expecting, not looking for, but expecting some sort of material. Like, yeah, it was when we crossed that first $1 million sale, or it was when we did a deal with a Fortune 500 company. And you said none of those things. That wasn't even really celebrated. We just kept moving when it happened. It was more so the person that you are discovering, almost in a way when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, like that refinement you are experiencing. I'd love to know, like, how have you seen yourself change, and why has that been so rewarding?
There's a few ways I can tackle this.
Hey, we don't bring easy questions here. We don't bring easy questions on Built from Scratch.
No, you don't. They're very thought provoking. I think the process of self-actualization is one of the most fulfilling things that we can have as humans. I think being the person that you always thought you were, or at least getting close. I don't think I'm the person just yet, but getting closer to the person of who you always thought you were. Because I always, I guess, in a way, looked up to my future self growing up, and obsessed over this image of myself in the future. Not in a like, oh, I'm great and grand, but just in a more just who the person grows up to be. And I think I'm on the right track. I think sometimes I'll deviate, but I always like seeing that path being fulfilled. It's an incredibly rewarding thing. I think that's what we're here to do. I think it's a duty as a human is to be the best version of yourself, and taking action towards it is a net positive for yourself, and I think for the world as well, fundamentally.
As an entrepreneur,
So that's really where it is.
as an entrepreneur too, it's like that is one of the greatest ways to self-actualize, because you're taking on all the risk. You have no idea if you're going to succeed. You have to put a lot of faith. You're going to get hit in the mouth multiple times. There's no like safety net. And because of that, you're able to experience things a lot. It's a lot more real. There's no painkiller to get through it. Like it's just, you keep
100%.
You experience yourself. It's really interesting. And I suppose, like, Charles, for the person that's thinking about starting their own company, they're like, I want to jump in. They've got all this energy, excitement. They got some crazy idea that they're going to go on. You spent 5 years at this. How does one prepare for entrepreneurship? How do you think about getting ready for the difficult trials ahead? Because I would imagine what's happened the last 5 years are not things you could have ever predicted.
Here's how I saw it growing up, because I always knew that this is what I wanted to do. And I also don't think that that's a prerequisite to doing it. I think action is fundamentally the prerequisite is just taking action. But when I was younger, I always saw it as I need to make sure that I get better as an individual, because at the end of the day, I'm the biggest factor and variable. Like, there's the luck factor and the environment factor, but like, if you don't perform as an individual, you're not going to succeed. So it was much more of a focus on myself, and not in the sense of like knowing what to do, but just in the soft skills, how to talk to somebody, how to be respectful towards yourself and to others, and how to be reliable, having your core set of values figured out that are uncompromising. These things which kind of we overlook and are not necessarily directly related to entrepreneurship, more so as a human, but at the end of the day is what propels you within entrepreneurship as well. These are the unspoken things that, from what I've observed, people notice and really kind of put a spotlight on you and makes you stand out. So the discipline side is a big one. I think it is important to be disciplined. It's normal to procrastinate. It's kind of having that balance of like, don't be too hard on yourself, but like also like, don't rely on your future self. Looking and striving to always be better as an individual has a direct translation to what you do in entrepreneurship. So don't sweat too much about over-educating yourself on the industry. Have faith and confidence in just doing it. And, there was this one clip of this guy saying, there's a bird trusts its the branch or its wings when it goes on a branch, and it's really trusting your wings. Like, you'll figure it out. At the end of the day, you figure it out. Going from point A to point B and driving a car and making a meal, and like at the end of the day, it's an ingredient. It's gathering the ingredients, making the recipe, and you got to make your mistakes. Don't be afraid of mistakes and just doing it.
We're going to finish the episode as we finish every episode here, Charles, and it's with the quote that means the most to you. So I'm going to read that for you here. Don't trust your future self if the you of today won't do it, nor will the you of tomorrow. And I want you to give me what this quote means to you and how the next generation of leaders can take this quote as a means of encouragement to change the world that we live in today.
We often rely on our future self. I don't feel like doing it today. Whatever it is the task is, I could do it today. I don't feel like doing it. I want to do it tomorrow. But the reality is our future self is relying on us. It's really the other way around. And for the you of tomorrow to do what that you has to do, you have to show up and do what you have to do. It's a weird symbiotic relationship. It's a give and take. You can't put it on them. You do it today.
Get it done. Everybody, that's Charles with Asic Jungle. Charles, if they want to get in contact with you, maybe buy one of these crazy machines or something, how do they get in contact?
LinkedIn is a great way. Charles Wissa.
We'll put that in the bio too. We'll put
Charles
that in the
M. Wissa.
Okay.
Yes. Awesome.
Perfect. Awesome. Charles, we really appreciate the time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Eric. It was great.